Hello, this is an assessment of an Ibach grand piano. This is 5'3" long, 160 centimetres, and it's a very well made piano. The Ibach pianos are very well made. There's one key that's broken here. Unfortunately, we'd have to replace that, so we're not going to get a perfect match because the line here will show a bit. The colour will be very difficult to match, and there's also some broken bits here. We can make good those, definitely we can fill those, and there's another broken key here. That again, if you want to repair it, it'd have to be taken off and another one put on. Apart from being really well made pianos, Ibach pianos are Art Deco style, and there's still beautiful casework too, as you can see inside. Now generally the piano's in reasonably good condition. You see the double overstringing here, that's a feature of good Ibach pianos, and they do it really well. The idea is to get maximum bass string length, so if you listen to the break point here, that's excellent for that size of piano. Is quite phenomenal. The way they've matched the break points too, always a sign of a very good piano. Very good match, and here as well. Phenomenal, really, phenomenal manufacturing. Tuning pins are really tight, original tuning pins, they're quite small, and really very tight, and again the stringing is excellent. The main problem we've got with this piano is it really lets it down tremendously, is the action. If you look at that key, this is a middle C, and as I press it down and I'm on full dip there, you can feel no set off. It's got no aftertouch is what we call it, and that makes it feel, for the pianist, very frustrating. You can't get any control over it. Now what will cure that problem of touch is a full regulation. First of all, we'll look at the key dip, and for some reason or other someone must have put washers that are too big under here, because the key dips, this is 11mm key dip gauge here, and the key dip here is probably less than 10. 9.5, 10. 10 would be absolute minimum. 11 is my preferred key dip for most pianos, and this one definitely is not going down far enough. So that means the key doesn't move down far enough and the hammer doesn't move up far enough, and we'll have a look in a minute what else is happening. Now, because the key's not going down far enough, the jack here, this is the jack here, which pulls out with this little button here. That little button there causes it to pull out. As the jack pulls out, we find that it's not really pulling out enough, and consequently there's no aftertouch. In fact, on this note there is, but down here there was not pulling out at all. Let's have a look at that one. That's middle C, and if you can see, it's not pulling out at all. However much I push it, you can just about see it move there. As I really force the key down, it's beginning to move, but that's no aftertouch at all. So first of all, we need to increase the key dip, and then we also need to decrease the hammer blow. The hammer blow is about 54 at the moment. It should be 47, so it should be sitting up there somewhere. We have to be a bit careful down the bottom end, because those hammers there are touching the wood there. If we increase put the hammers too high up, it would be difficult to get them under. Sometimes you can angle the action like that to get the hammers under when it's a triple overstrung. But that's the problem, the hammers are higher up, so maybe you won't be able to get quite so much decrease of hammer blow at that point. Normally, if we're going to fully restore a piano, we'd change hammers, shanks, hinges and rollers underneath there. If the rollers were changed, that would automatically bring the hammers up higher. So I'd probably recommend rollers being changed as the ideal thing to do, and then we bring the hammers up. Fortunately, these hinges are quite tight, and then they're the right tightness roughly. So it was possibly not necessary to change the hinges. It would be a nice job to do, but I think probably ideally we'd like to change the hammers as well, and you get a better tone. They've been quite worn, it's been quite sort of used, these hammers. You can see the indentations in. So it could do with refacing, and that gives you a clearer tone, or changing the hammers would be nicer, but they're obviously expensive. There's a reasonable amount of hammer left. We could just reface these just to bring the less surface area of the hammer hitting the string. Cosmetically, the piano's in reasonable condition. There's a few scratches here. On the top there's obviously been something placed, and we're very hard to make that good, although it can make it a lot better, and the side here is scratched as well. There's a slight fade on the top lid where it's been held down, and if you've got a grand piano, it's a good idea to put the lid, to alternate where you're putting the lid firmly closed and back, and then you don't get this line appearing. Again, the front rail here has got a few blemishes that could easily be made good when the piano was being repaired. The piano's very dusty and dirty inside, and we could obviously clean that up once that wouldn't affect the sound of the piano, but it'd be nice to do it while the piano's in the workshop. So in summary, that's a 1924 Ibach 5'3" grand piano, potentially great, very beautiful tone, but spoilt by the hammers which need refacing, but mainly the main problem here is that the action itself is very, very difficult to control. The key weight is about right, around about 48, 50 grams, so that's correct, but it's just that it's a no aftertouch whatsoever. The key dip isn't great enough, neither is, and the hammer blow is too great. Ideally, to change rollers would be a great thing to do. We would like to change the rollers at least, reface the piano, and then regulate it properly. But it's a shame to think that musicians have been playing on a piano like this and not being able to get the best out of it. The work will then last at least, of normal playing, so another 20 years at least. Thank you very much for listening. We've now completed the work on this Ibach grand. First of all, we can see the key tops. We've replaced one of them completely. I don't know if you can identify which one it is. It's actually this one. There's a slight colour difference, and the fronts, I don't know if you remember the chips on there, but that we've managed to more or less completely disguise. That's one of them, and that's another one where the chips were. Our top was faded, but we managed to get rid of the watermark that was on here and generally tidied up the case, so you can't really see that much scratching. I think it looks quite respectable. It wasn't possible to get rid of this one completely. Actually, it shows up worse on the video than it does in live, but that's because really it goes too deep, and the only thing you can do is completely repolish it. That's the only way we get rid of that, but we've generally done the best we can. Yeah, the fall's been tidied up. There's no marks on it at all. We generally cleaned and dusted the inside of the piano as well. And remember, the touch was actually, we found that we're all over the place. So there's hugely different key dips, and that makes a huge difference. So that we've increased the key dip now. This is 11mm key dip measurer. The most important thing for the pianist, what he notices the most once the key dip's been increased, we've also got a nice aftertouch here. So when you play the note, it comes back, you see there. And then the spring allows it to go back up when you release the key. Now, the other bits of work that we noticed as we were going along, this slap rail needs, I'll show you what that is in a minute. After you've played the note, and if you press the pedal down, that shouldn't take it up too much higher, but it takes it up a lot higher. That means that when you play the note, the damper kicks back onto your finger. You can actually feel the damper kicking onto your finger. It's not terribly bad, but if you look at the damper here, it goes up a bit bit too high, so it kicks back down slightly. It can be a lot worse. Sometimes you get a lot more problem than that on the slap rail adjustment. Now the hammer height has automatically been adjusted. Now it's above the hammer rail by changing the knuckle here. So that's just brought it right up. The roller's thicker, and therefore the hammer's higher up. We didn't have to do much other adjustment, just change the rollers. If you are regulating, rather than turning the regulation screw underneath, I recommend changing the rollers if economy allows it, because that really is much smoother as well when it comes over the roller. You see it's setting off nicely now. This jack's pulling out beautifully, but also when I lift it up, the spring's taking it up as well. So well, it's as well regulated as we can get it. Now you notice we've also refaced the hammers. When you reface them, by the way, make sure they're refaced perpendicular to the strings. It's very important that the hammer hits all three strings properly. So just refacing, you could actually make it sound worse if you don't then align the hammers to the string. Make sure the hammer hits all three strings at the same time. So you can see visually very often, but then just check it in the piano and make sure it's doing that. Now slap rail is actually this rail here, which can be adjusted here with these adjustments, and it just needs taking down very, very slightly, probably a couple, 2-3 millimeters, so that the dampers don't go up quite so far. So the damper stop rail is done by adjusted with these screws here, and Ibach's got a lot of them in because it's a very well-made piano. It's very, very easy to over adjust it. Be very, very careful. If you over adjust it and take it down too far, then you lose all the aftertouch, and it feels disgusting. You get that problem now and again, that somebody's over adjusted it, taking it down too far. Basically, your dampers should well clear on the bicords. These are pretty well clear, and I think we're going to find when we put the action back in that it's just right. So yeah, it's just fine now. So when you press the key down, if you watch the damper pedal go down, it just lifts them. So the stock rail is just a slight hint of raising it slightly. Then it doesn't slap down on you when you play it. So that's a reconditioning of a Ibach grand piano, about 5'8" long, and because it's upstairs in the middle of Oxford, we decided to leave it here rather than take it to the workshop. Actually, it's quite a lot of toing and froing, so it's cost us a lot more in travel and so on, although we're quite near the centre. So it's debatable, but it's upstairs and we didn't want to do the extra removal costs, so instead we've been travelling to and fro. If it was in the workshop, it would be much nicer actually, so difficult one, that one. By the way, when you reface, you must also voice the pianos afterwards, otherwise they're going to be a bit too bright. And really, after the piano's been played for 6 months or so, it could be fine voiced again. But the results, especially the aftertouch, that's the thing that the pianist is going to notice the most, changing the rollers and fine regulation, and also giving it more on the key dip. By the way, the curiosity of Ibach's, this size of Ibach, is you notice that the keys are moving that way instead of the other way when I press the unicorder. Same effect, but they switched later on to doing it the same way as everyone else. But Ibach's just a thoughtful manufacturer, doing many things that just because they think it's a good idea to do them, and expenses. Well, they were very expensive baby grand pianos when they were made. Much more thought gone into it than a modern piano. Thank you very much for listening.